we estimated that between 50 and 70% of re-engineering efforts were not successful in achieving the desired breakthrough performance. Unfortunately, this simple descriptive observation has been widely misrepresented and transmogrified and distorted into a normative statement. In other words, many people think it means that 50 to 70% of all re-engineering efforts will fail. Nothing could be further from the truth. I'm Natalia Loback, and this is the Change Course podcast. I've spent my career leading complex change and transformation in organizations. And over my career, I discovered what makes complex transformational change stick. Connected change is all about leading successful change within the context of the organization. And here at the Change Course podcast, we're all about making change sustainable. So listen in, drop us a like, a comment, and let us know how we can help you connect and change. The secret to success. Welcome back to the Change Course podcast in the third episode of our 3-part series on one of the most pervasive statistics about change and transformation out there that claims that 70% of transformations or change management efforts are doomed for failure. So, one of the things that we talked about in the 2 previous episodes was where this came from and the origin of this statistic. And that, I have a little bit of a beef with lazy consulting firms who keep wanting to use this as a way to motivate people and companies and scared executives to buy their services. When really what you need to be doing is finding the right person to help you, and also really thinking critically about what it is that you're measuring. But before we get there today, I want to talk about why something like this completely takes hold and takes on a life of its own. So at the very beginning of the episode, I read a quote from the follow-up to Reengineering the Corporation. The Reengineering Revolution was written in 1995. And again, remember what was happening at that time, right? You had the massive introduction of technology, the first phase of technology transformation happening in corporations and in organizations. You had the change literature exploding around this time, trying to address how to actually lead some of these changes that transformed organizations. And for those of you who have gone through business school, there are a lot of case studies around this time or that are centered around this time, looking at the big organizations that completely failed and fell off the map at this time. Why? Because they were unable to embrace the technological changes. So yes, transformation efforts can fail if organizations don't seek to transform, right? I mean, come on, we all know the companies that completely failed at that time. I think Fujifilm is one of the ones that was the focus, certainly, of a lot of the business cases that I did back, let's not date me, but, back when I was in business school in the early 2000s. But, looking at that organization, they had no desire to change. They said people will always use film cameras. They'll always use, the old style because the quality of the photographs is so much better. And what they failed to see was that it actually doesn't matter if you can take 500 photographs on your phone, you'll get one that's really, really good. And people don't actually care about the quality of that one, getting that one photograph just right, except for people who are extremely passionate about photography. And so as the digital revolution came and digital cameras started becoming prevalent, the company wasn't able to adapt. And yes, they did fail, but they didn't look to transform at all. Anyway, so that's an example of what we're talking about, right? Failure to transform, period, not failure at a transformation effort. And what I want to read to you is the full quote from Michael Hammer and Stephen Stanton's follow-up to Reengineering the Corporation. So the Reengineering Revolution was written in 1995. And I mean, thank you to Chapters Indigo for the overnight express delivery of this book. I mean, this one is harder to find, I have to admit. And I think it is out of print in some places. But again, really interesting to read this. So in Chapter 2, titled The Top 10 Mistakes in Reengineering, page 14, they directly address the estimate that was made in Reengineering the Corporation that I read on the last episode. And keep in mind, this is only a couple years later. Like, this statistic, this idea became an urban legend very quickly. But let me read you the rebuttal and what they actually said about it. In Reengineering the Corporation, we estimated that between 50 and 70% of reengineering efforts were not successful in achieving the desired breakthrough performance. Unfortunately, this simple descriptive observation has been widely misrepresented and transmogrified and distorted into a normative statement. In other words, many people think it means that 50 to 70% of all reengineering efforts will fail. That emphasis is in the book, by the way. Nothing could be further from the truth. There is no inherent success or failure rate for reengineering. The results depend entirely on the quality, intensity, and intelligence of the effort. Failure is not caused by cosmic rays, bad luck, or other factors outside of human control. Failure is caused by people who don't know what they're doing and who don't pursue reengineering the right way. Success in reengineering does not require personal heroics, extraordinary talent or capability, or enormous amounts of good luck. The real key to reengineering success is staying focused and avoiding stupid mistakes. Okay, I mean, if you're not kind of giggling, I would be surprised. I mean, come on, Michael Hammer. I appreciate your spice. Because yeah, you could read the passion, you could read the passion right off the page there, right? I mean, I don't think I've ever read something in a business book quite so pointed as that. I mean, if you want to call things like, avoiding stupid mistakes, I salute you. But underneath all of that fire, there is truth. And that is that when we're talking about organizational change, there's this idea that we write a business case, right? And then we have a project and it's 12 months long, very short. And by the way, 12 months is short, especially for a large organizational change or digital transformation. Like, let me be clear. But you have a 12-month window to get it done. And that encompasses all of the planning and upfront work and configuration and understanding the organization and understanding process and getting everything sorted and organized to be ready for change. And also the quote unquote go live, right? So if we're looking at measuring objectives against something like a business case, let's say you need a little bit of extra time. I have a perfect example of this. In 2019, I started a large digital transformation at an organization that it's a global organization. So they had 52 sites worldwide. They were in about 6 different countries. And we started, the project had already been running for about 4 months before I got there. I came in as the change lead in August of 2019. So, let's roll back the clock here and let's all remember, before the world fell apart, what was happening in 2019. So we started all of the planning and understanding and configuration work that was going to go into this large enterprise digital transformation. And we had until April of 2020. I'm starting to laugh because you know what happened. Everyone knows what happened. We had until April 2020 to get it done. And let me tell you that by March 15th of 2020, and let me be clear, this organization had manufacturing sites in China in the epicenter of where, okay? So they saw the train coming. We knew what was coming. And still, can you believe it? We failed. We failed our objective, right? We didn't make the transformation happen. We didn't complete it by April 30th of 2020. Geez, I wonder why. But we did complete it by July 1st. So we did actually get the system up and running by July 1st. And then we came back and worked another 8 months with the organization to accelerate adoption and to really look at where we had not addressed some of the process changes that came with everything that occurred in March 2020. Let's not forget, there were changes to the organization that we had not anticipated because of what happened at that time. And so when you come back into the organization and you're looking to accelerate adoption, that's a different ballgame. Now, if we had looked at whether we met our objectives against the business case, absolutely 100% failure. We would be in the quote unquote 70%. But if we looked at that longer tail, if we looked at what were actually the objectives of this transformation, certain level of user adoption, certain level of cost savings around processes that were currently being run by a shoestring and an Excel spreadsheet, stuff like that, right? Those are the key objectives of the transformation. Not did you get it done in 18 months or 12 months? So this is where I get very passionate about what we're actually measuring. This is where I get really spicy around, are you actually measuring the right things? And success versus failure, that binary of, did we succeed? Did we fail? Is actually kind of useless. Like, it doesn't help you understand, did the change stick? Was it sustainable? Did people embrace and adopt and continue to improve upon the new process or the new system or the new way of working? Did they continue to do that or not? For me, that's much more important. That's central to the philosophy that I have coming at change. So when we're looking at an organization, when we're looking at defining the change and the objectives, do not throw KPIs at me. I'm not interested. I want objectives and key results. And I want certain time frames around that. Absolutely. We need a challenge. We need to be able to accelerate change and change behavior. But I'm also looking at, what's happening 12 months after this is done and dusted, right? What's happening in that period of accelerated adoption after your system, quote unquote, goes live, right? Same is true for organizational changes. You have a period of adjustment after the change, quote unquote, occurs, right? So let's say you're restructuring an organization, you're moving the boxes around on the org chart. It takes time for the organization to normalize and then reach that higher level of productivity. And, a lot of people think, especially leaders, because they get ahead of the change, they think, oh yeah, we should be there. Like, once we change, we should be at that high level of production right away. And that's actually not true. There is an adjustment period. People need to adjust. I won't get into the details of that. I've done like a ton of podcasts on why that's true. So feel free to go back and mine some of those previous episodes. But the point is that there is a dip in productivity. There is a dip in adoption right at the beginning, and then things start to improve. But you've got to look at your opportunities to make incremental change in that time post-implementation. And the incremental changes that you are focusing on have the goal of change sustainability, always. You want that change to stick. Because if you are not focused on that, the minute you leave the organization, everything will fall apart. Everything will fall apart. And you'll also get a bad reputation as a change practitioner or as a transformation specialist. Because the change has to live beyond you. You're just the facilitator. You're there to help the organization adopt it. But the change is not dependent upon you, and it shouldn't be. So, I think that a lot of this fire around, did we fail? Are we a failure? We missed one of our objectives, is absolute garbage. And also measuring the wrong stuff, right? Measuring the wrong things. And anyone who will tell you that don't be in the 70%, be in the 30% success, and here's your recipe, be very cautious about that. Be very cautious about that. If they're not talking to you about changing your view on what are the objectives of this transformation, you better be thinking again. And seriously, the truth is, and I agree 100% with what I read in Reengineering the Corporation, it is all about sustainability. It is all about incremental change. It is all about making sure that you are applying the right tools and the right ideas. And if at first you don't succeed, try again. You can get it right. You can get it right. And the goal is not to be right. The goal is to get it right. So you have to continue to practice, and you have to continue to apply the principles until the system switches over and moves fully into that new change state. So, my second point, why does a story like this gather momentum and essentially take on a life of its own? Well, some of you that commented on the first episode provided some insight into why that happens. And I agree, actually. This is exactly what I was looking for. That feels right. We remember our failures so much more than we remember our successes. That's just human nature. And so you often overestimate the failures and underestimate the successes. So yeah, of course, because it's acute. You feel that failure so much more strongly, right? That 70% kind of feels right? Or, if you missed one objective, you're like, oh, I'm an ultimate failure. I mean, is that the difference between getting a 90% and a 95% or perfect on an exam? Right? So my point is that there's resonance to that. And there's also fear too, right? It sparks our fear. 70% is a pretty big number, right? And if you are a leader embarking upon a big transformation or change and you've never done it before, first of all, you're probably a little bit anxious about it. I mean, I would be if it was my first time, especially if it's not what you do. I mean, transformation and change is what I do. I have built my career around this. But so many of the executives that I work with and that I speak to on a regular basis, they're operations leaders, and they are so good at operations, right? But operations is not transformation. These two things are very different. Incremental change and continuous improvement is a skill that you build in both places. But incremental change, continuous improvement is not transformation. They are different. It is a completely different skill set when you're coming at leading a large scale change in an organization. So if you're afraid, if you're already coming in with some anxiety and saying, you know what, I've never done this before, and failure is not an option, yeah, of course that 70% is going to resonate with you. Of course it is. Because the first thing when you go out to your colleagues and you're going to ask, what should I be doing? They're going to tell you what you shouldn't do first. Oh, you should avoid this mistake. You should avoid that mistake. Don't do this. Oh, I failed at this place. I would do it differently this way next time. So all you're going to hear about is failure, unless you have somebody who's a really good transformation expert or somebody who does this successively in organizations to be able to give you some really good points about what you should be doing versus what you should be avoiding. But our natural tendency as humans is to avoid these feelings, these negative feelings, right? So we want to avoid things like the feelings of failure, of shame, of fear. We want to avoid them, right? So we're looking at ways to avoid it. That's why I think there is resonance around this number, like feels right? Like it feels right. And of course, whenever somebody is embarking upon a really difficult journey, yeah, failure for sure, top of mind every time. So I don't blame people for feeling like this is right, but we know it's not. So why does it take on a life of its own? And this takes me back to one of the reasons why I founded Connected Change. The stories that we tell have incredible power. I've seen multiple references putting this statistic and the meaning of this statistic back on Cotter, which is not true. I just saw an article in HBR that quoted Cotter as saying 70% of transformations fail. Again, not true, because we've covered that. But it takes on a life of its own. Why? Because the story has resonance. It's a story about fear. It's the urban legend, right? It's the come on. Everybody knows at least one urban legend. I mean, for us, when I was growing up, there were a few, pretty substantial ones. I mean, razor blades and Halloween candy is one of them. The other one, the old ghost story of driving down the country road and hearing the scraping on the side of the car. And then you drive away and there's a hook stuck in the car because, the crazy serial killer was trying to get inside. And I mean, these legends persist. Why? Because they're moralistic. I mean, it's the same reason why humans tell fairy tales. Fairy tales have a lesson to teach us, right? It's a way of imparting wisdom and knowledge in the form of a story, because nobody really cares if you want to talk about, oh, that time I failed, right? Or like, oh, this person had that experience. I mean, it's not really exciting, right? So if you wrap that story in a really compelling package, it takes on a life of its own. And I believe this is what's happened with this statistic. It's a moralistic fairy tale. It's a moralistic urban legend around. Guess what? If you don't pay attention to this, you're going to fail. And it taps into our deepest fears, our deepest anxieties around failure, around shame, right? That's why something like this persists. And honestly, there's always a way to make it sound right. There's always a way to prove the point. I mean, come on, McKinsey and BCG have been doing it now for however many years they have, built massive transformation practices upon a completely bogus statistic? Yeah. Why? Because there's no incentive for them to prove it wrong. If everyone believes it anyway, isn't it true? I'm being a bit facetious, but I hope you understand my point. Stories have incredible power. And honestly, myself and probably all of the change experts that I interact with and work with combined will not be able to unseat and debunk this urban legend. There is no way. Why? Because it has taken on a life of its own. So, what can we do about it? Well, this is why when you're seeking to make big, transformative change in an organization, you've got to use story, and you need to look at story and how it shows up in the organization or the community that you're trying to change. Changing our stories is one of the most powerful ways to implement and enact and inspire and spark change. And stories can come from everywhere. The most compelling way to change a story is peer-to-peer. I mean, honestly, you listen to stories from authority and you're like, nah, I don't really know. But if somebody sends you some urban legend post on Facebook, you better believe you're passing that on. Why not? Because you feel like, oh my goodness, just in case this is true, I want to make sure that my friends and my peers know about it. So you feel good for doing something good, right? Like you're helping them avoid some potential pitfall, whether it's true or not. Whether it's true or not. So what have we learned over this 3-part journey? Firstly, the stories can overtake even our best and most valiant efforts at telling the truth. And that just tells us about the power of story and how important it is to use and harness the power of these human stories through our change efforts, and just how effective and amazing that can be. The second thing is that fear is also a very powerful tool, and fear-based incentives for change rarely work in the long run. I've talked about this in a couple other episodes, but the truth is that if you're using fear to spark change, if you're using fear to get people to move towards a new future, once they get comfortable again, what do you think happens? Well, they just go back to the way they've always done things. The last thing we really need to remember and think about is, if we are thinking about change success and change failure, then we're probably going about it wrong. We need to be thinking about sustainability. We need to be thinking about how change sticks. And that's a big paradigm shift. That's a big paradigm shift, especially for people who are used to working in ops. Ops is very much, you either met your goal or you didn't. If you try to put transformation in that same sort of bucket, it doesn't really work, because it's more about trying to get it right and doing the work to get it right than being right. So it's more about continuously learning, more about applying incremental change to your adoption phase and your implementation than it is about saying, did we or did we not meet this 18-month or 12-month objective? And that is a harder thing to change. So, as I have talked about in many episodes, and really the reason why I titled this podcast Change Course is because it's really about this change of course in thinking. When we think about change, we need to change course from thinking about success versus failure to thinking about how we make this sustainable. How are we harnessing the power in the wind, the waves, what's behind us, what's coming with us, to make that change stick, to keep us going on the voyage, to harness the power of the various forces and tools that we have at our disposal to make change continue and get better and better as we go along. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, I invite you to like, share, rate, and subscribe because it helps others find us. Change Course is brought to you by Chart House Advisory Services and ConnectedChange.com. Our music is Levity by Emily Clausen. Show notes have moved. We're now at ConnectedChange.com. So visit us there under the Change Course podcast page, and you'll find a list of all the resources that I've mentioned here today. While you're visiting us, sign up for the Change Navigator newsletter. You'll keep on top of all things change, and every month we are sharing exclusive content and resources only with our subscribers. So don't miss out. Sign up at ConnectedChange.com. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to change course.